What is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Forever Green Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, alongside of me, Mr. Nick Franco. And Franco, the 2026 World Cup is underway. Mexico and South Africa facing off right now. We're doing a little watch along here. And Mexico, to be truthful, we're in the second half right now, so we didn't start at the beginning of the game. But Mexico just scores in the 66th minute. Mexico goes up 2-0 on South Africa. See, we know the terminology here.
Yeah, we were talking about how much background we have in soccer, because us, as growing up in America, I would say we have the big four in America, and soccer kind of falls tertiary to the four other major sports within America. Obviously, we have Major League Soccer, where we'll see a few of the talented players representing their countries within the FIFA World Cup. But it's always just a time to really fall in line with the culture that is the most international sport in worldwide, and really carries it into every other culture except for America's, which once the FIFA World Cup comes around, obviously the patriotism comes out and people will cheer on the sport. And even though they'll know only a handful, if that, of the roster, but I mean, there's been some great players, and it's an opportunity for the United States to promote their brand, really. Because if we look back in the past, as I grew up, we as the commentary team, we see Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, legendary soccer names within U.S. soccer, and for the U.S. to be playing and hopefully having a great performance throughout, those players on the roster today will become household names around the U.S. and might tune in a few more eyes into the Major League Soccer.
Well, I got to say, some of those names that you threw out for the American soccer team over time, this is what gets me about American soccer. It's really looking at it. You mentioned the big four, American football, basketball, baseball, hockey. America's best athletes are truly playing those sports. That's just the reality of the situation. In some of these other countries, their best athletes are playing soccer, or of course, in some situations, what they call football, right? And that's that's the obvious answer as to why America doesn't perform as well in these tournaments as, say, other countries. And that's why, some of the past in America, we look at it, soccer does fall on that fifth line of, just watchable sports in America. And looking at that, that's, the United States, they're usually somewhere in the middle, if not down towards the bottom of the pack in terms of all the World Cup teams. Now, this year, of course, there's 48 teams. So you have, the United States, they slot in a little bit better amidst all the 48 team madness. But in terms of history, the United States, some of their best athletes are playing other sports, and that's why they're not as fluent in soccer. And people ask that question all the time: why can't the United States? They put a man on the moon, but they can't make it past the round of 16 in the World Cup necessarily seamlessly. But the United States, I'll say this: like, they're probably, I mean, they have the path in which they have right now. If we're just talking about the United States solely, in Group D, the United States, they have Australia, Paraguay, and Turkey. So I mean, that's a group the United States should theoretically make it out of. And if they make it out of that group, I mean, it's the competition around them, depending on what happens, it's all dependent on who they play in the tournament. But, they could make a little bit of a run. It all starts in that group stage of just being one of the better teams in a group. And you could say that about the United States being in a group with Australia, Paraguay, and Turkey, even though that's not going to be the easiest path in the world.
Yeah, I mean, looking out at what we have on on the scale, and if we start looking down the brackets, the United States and Brazil and Mexico really do have a solid and easy slate for them. If we can pull up the group for Group A, it's Mexico, South Africa, and the Korea Republic and Czechia. Oh,
Czechia.
Czechia.
The Czech Republic is
They-
now
yeah,
Czechia. Just they changed that a couple years ago. They're like, all right, for branding purposes, we want to do Czechia now instead of the Czech Republic. It's more
that's what kind of threw me
it's
for a.
wearable.
That's what threw me for a loop trying to say that name. Uh, but I mean, you also learn some history while you're at it during this World Cup. But
Oh, I mean, 2014. I remember, 2014. They were saying France and Germany played, I believe, in the quarterfinals, if I'm not mistaken, and they were going 100 years ago. France and Germany met on the battlefield, and now 100 years later, they meet on the soccer field. And I was like, all right, that's a little connection. Like better times are here, right? But
yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
and within that group, was I would favor. I mean, for our predictions right now, I'm going based off of purely the skill or the talent of the leagues around the world. I mean, looking at which leagues are developing revenue and which leagues are genuinely being televised, that's where you're going to see the most talented players in soccer. I mean, or football. Football, as we'll refer to it
No, we're
during
doing.
FIFA time.
Well,
Football,
part of this tournament is in the United States. I feel like we need to call it soccer.
yeah. Until
Like we're just and to our. I mean, look at our audience. Period. In terms of Forever Green Sports, we're mostly on the tangent of basketball and football, which are more. Basketball is pretty international, but specifically football, like that's an American crowd. So I feel like we welcome everyone into the stream, no matter where you're from. But I feel like we should use American terms, especially for a tournament that's partially held in America and at
yeah,
least in
right
North
down the
America.
street at Foxborough, which we can talk about that in more full. Watching what FIFA and Boston had to go through to even get approval to host these games was an absolute nightmare. I mean, right now, the traffic down 93 or 95 heading towards either Boston or towards Foxborough. I hope you're not trying to get home anytime soon. And if you are, tune into this podcast right now because you got a good amount of time on your hands until you get to the next exit. I mean, right now they have shut down all other routes. Um, there is only one highway funneling in and out of Gillette Stadium, and if you have traveled through Gillette Stadium during even a Patriots game, you know that most of the time it is. I'm a big believer in staying throughout the all four quarters of a game. Sometimes it makes sense to beat the traffic leaving Gillette Stadium
I would
because
just can't.
right now it's not
Just set
even
up a
called.
tent, man.
Yeah,
I just
right.
I don't humans. I understand you want to get home, but sometimes you just have to create home on the road.
Well, that's another thing. FIFA and Gillette Stadium, well, also known as Boston Stadium right now, even though Gillette Stadium is 50 miles northeast or north or southwest of Boston. It is they're not allowing tailgating and they're not allowing people to set up grills and not
For the
allowing.
World Cup. Look, here's my thing. I'm not blaming any particular body for any of the World Cup shenanigans, but what I'll say is like just this World Cup, like America, I mean, land of the free, like there have been so many restrictions during this World Cup, just the build up to the World Cup. And, you look at all the situations, like, what is going on? Like,
Yep,
land
yep,
of the free, like, what is going on? Like, there's been so many, like, say that for instance, like, America's hosting a World Cup. America is hosting a World Cup. It should be all out fun for every single American citizen that, like, this is a chance to grow the game of soccer in America. And yet, everybody has what they say about ticket prices, but how I see it is it's a market thing. If people are willing to pay those prices, say wealthier people are willing to pay those prices, why wouldn't you charge that if you're FIFA and whoever's running the ticket output? But that's not necessarily the problem for me. It's something like that where you go, really? You're not allowed to tailgate, you're not allowed to set up grills, you're not allowed to just
yeah,
essentially have fun before what we see like in American culture, a football game, a basketball game, a baseball game, a hockey game, all of those, all those events, you're going to set up outside and have a good time. We'll pregame a little bit. But for soccer, we're going, oh no, sorry. This is such a big event. You can't do that here. That's that's not going to grow the game of soccer in America. And maybe I'm ragging on that specific
yeah.
point just a little bit, but it just feels like in general, like, there were all these situations with, say, there was the Somali referee, and there was the whole, there's still the whole situation with Team Iran and trying to get them kicked out of the tournament, and then they can't even really stay in the United States either. Like, those are more political issues, and I won't really dive into those because, there are more nuanced topics that go into that. But it's like the World Cup, I feel like we should just be doing everything we can to set up the best experience for American citizens and even international citizens
Yeah,
that
right.
come through and want to watch. I mean, let's face it, like, soccer in this environment is interesting because you have a tournament where it's like, here's 5 weeks, here are the groups, here's the one goal that all these teams are trying to attain next to. And I always love it in these international settings, whether it's for basketball or soccer. These teams are built through decades. Like, these are really teams, if you look at them, that people want to see, because we always see, like, oh, college basketball, right? College basketball or college football. People now hate the transfer portal because they go, well, guys used to be here for 4 years and grow a reputation. They used to grow a reputation from being a freshman to growing up and becoming a senior within that setting. And the whole team, like, you say you get a group of three freshmen together, they might grow up together on the same team for 4 years, and they might be a title contending team in years 3 and 4. Well, soccer and even international soccer and international basketball, not talking about club soccer, not talking about the NBA, but the international game, you have players who have been playing together in the same country, in the same clubs, like, the lower level clubs in the same country for potentially over a decade by the time they get the chance to even be on a World Cup
Yeah.
stage and on a World
Most of
Cup
these
field.
guys
And
are brought onto the team and are very
it's much more
homegrown.
cohesive unit because these teams are built over time where guys are, kind of in the same age group. They play each other when, say, they're, especially in soccer, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And then, by the time they actually get the chance to play at the World Cup, they might be 23, 24, 25, 26, somewhere in that range, maybe for the first time. And, for some, it's even later than that. And, those teams have been really bred and grown over time in a longer period of time than people really realize. And that's why I just love international soccer and basketball.
Some of these kids, I mean, they just showed a kid on Mexico that can't be a day over 20. I mean, I think a lot of these guys will. The thing with the FIFA World Cup is most of these talented players will be on the FIFA World Cup roster for up for 4 to 5 World Cups. So up to 16 to 20 years into their careers, and
That's if
will
they're
be able
they're
to,
they're really good.
yeah, they'll establish their names. And I mean, in the U.S., it's not really like that. The college soccer scene here is almost absent. in the United States. I mean, no disrespect to soccer, college soccer, but I haven't seen it once on ESPN for a national broadcast, even a championship game. I'm sure I'm not looking hard enough for it, but there's not
Can't
really
imagine
any.
it's on ESPN. It's probably like, ESPN U, something of that. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
ESPN U for sure. Seen some
but
college soccer. Seen some
it's
SLU
like
games. I think SLU soccer is pretty good. St. Louis University, for those who don't know.
I'm pretty sure Vermont won the championship as like a complete underdog. I believe it was last year.
Look at our hometown. Like, this is what we're just pulling out of our brains from our hometown soccer experience. Like, yeah, I saw SLU play a couple times. And, oh, one time I was watching the news and I feel like, okay, they took us through a segment of four like four university games from universities in the area. It was like Missouri Baptist and SLU and like, teams like that. And so the news, here in St. Louis, they do every now and then they put out they put out the soccer highlights specifically for the universities. But in terms of this soccer tournament, and I've got, of course we are using the word soccer. We got to make predictions. I know right now, like 83rd minute of Mexico, South Africa, we can kind of be like, all right, Group A is maybe a little spoiled to some degree for us because we we kind of know partially the outcome of this game, or at least 80% of the outcome of this game so far. But for Group A, Franco, Mexico, South Korea, South Africa, and Czechia, how do you rank these teams in this group? Who's coming out of this group?
Were we able to get the predictions that we were able to make on what's icons.com? But going down Group A, we got Mexico, South Africa, Czechia, which I have now been informed the Czech Republic no longer exists, and
Well, it
Korea.
exists. They changed their branding a little bit. They went
Yeah,
from like
rebranded.
they went
And
from like if it was Forever Green Sports Republic, it would be like Forever Greenia or something now. Like that's kind of how it would be, I guess. But anyway.
yeah, and then Korea Republic, which I'm assuming is North and South Korea.
Well, it's just South Korea. They're Korea Republic. Both of them. They claim to be one Korea, right? But this is mostly, if not all. I mean, it should be all South Korean players. So this is South Korea.
And Czechia. So I would say from the experience and I mean I what was that that movie about the South African soccer team?
I have no idea.
I'm blanking
You
on it.
can't you can't you can't ask me for movie references because movie references on my end, like I'm a little spotty. Like my genre over time, like I wouldn't even say I'm a sports movie watcher. I always like war movies. But that's beside the point. But Group A
Yeah.
here, if I'm just breaking down Group A myself, between Mexico, South Korea, Czechia, and South Africa. Well, we see in the first game here, Mexico's up 2-0 against South Africa. Although that's not exactly um, that that result is not surprising because if you look at Mexico, they're playing in Mexico right now.
Right. This is
Team
full time.
Mexico, I believe in this specific stadium, they in the last 85 games, I may be wrong on the stat, but I believe I heard this during the broadcast. During the last 85 games Team Mexico played in this particular stadium, they've only lost two games. Two games. Like they're on their home turf right now in a World Cup opener. You'd expect Mexico to win against South Africa coming overseas at this particular point. So
And
in this group A, I would find it hard to not have Mexico at the top of this group. And then after that, South Korea is kind of they've been a challenger in recent World Cups in recent years and tournaments. And I have them second in this group. I think Czechia comes in third. I think they're a little, they can be a little rough in the European setting. They're very physical. Like every time I watch them in the Euros, I feel like they're just a very tall and physical team, which is not surprising for, you know, where that country is located in the world. But South Africa, I have coming in fourth here. I don't really necessarily like South Africa made a run, if I'm not mistaken. I don't even know if it was a run. I feel like it was just like they were involved in the tournament back in 2010, but you really haven't heard much of them since. So in this group, I have Mexico, Korea Republic, aka South Korea, Czechia, and South Africa in that order, 1 through 4. But Franco, what did you ultimately come up with here? What
My
was your 1 through 4?
my, my prediction came out with Mexico walking away with the number one slot. South Africa will be.
They got to
Well,
come back from this loss. They got to come back here.
I believe they have three matchups, or they face off
They
with
do.
each person
a-
in their group.
They
So,
do a round robin. So say South Africa, they'll play Mexico, Czechia, and Korea,
yep,
like those, and then so on and
and
so forth.
and I have Czechia coming out in third, and probably Korea getting the boot from the fourth round or the first round or the group round, group, group stage. I'll get the terminology correct.
This would be the group stage, and then now like it used to be, a 32 team tournament, if I'm not mistaken, or no, like a 16 team bracket. But now it's a 32 team bracket, which is just like in terms of keeping track of all this, it's all right, pretty insane. And of course, it only happens every 4 years, so a little refresher, right? But Mexico. So Franco, you in Group A, just to run this down: Mexico, South Africa, Czechia, and Korea coming in last. And then from my perspective, I have Mexico, Korea in second, Czechia in third. So we both agree upon that. But then South Africa, I have fourth. So South Africa and Korea, that could be quite the game coming up in the future. However, Group B, moving on to Group B, we have Canada, we have Bosnia Herzegovina, Qatar, and Switzerland in this group. So Franco, 1 through 4, how do you have these ranked here?
I'm I'm taking. I would want to lean towards Switzerland. I think that obviously European soccer has more influence, but in my grouping, I was really leaning towards, and my bracket will show my lack of their knowledge of these teams and what is really going into what talent is on the field for each country. So I am really leaning towards marquee. So I also think Canada has produced some good talent that has made it over to the Major League Soccer phase. So I have Canada walking out one, Switzerland coming in second, and Bosnia coming in third, with Qatar coming in fourth. I know Qatar has been developing their sports and also putting money toward a lot of money into their entertainment sphere. However, I just don't think the talent has developed just yet because it is almost a newer phase of what is being brought to the Middle East in countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Dubai. But I mean, in a few years, I think that is going to be that area of the world is going to be a focal point for sports entertainment. And if we haven't seen that already,
Yeah, I was going to say this decade has certainly been the introduction to that era. But in this group, I do have Switzerland topping the group because Switzerland, they're always that scrappy, kind of underdog-ish team in every tournament. And, there's always a point in every tournament, it feels like, where we're going, Switzerland is, how are they here right now? How did we get here? How did Switzerland, and it does get to a particular point where people do kind of look at it and go like, we're not surprised with Switzerland being here anymore. So this could be the turnaround where Switzerland actually surprises us the other way and doesn't do as well as one would typically expect. But usually Switzerland, they're overachievers at these international tournaments. So I have them coming in first in this Group B, and in second, this is going to be the surprise. Bosnia. Bosnia coming in second in this group. And got to give a shout out to my Bosnians out there because just to give this fact, St. Louis, where I'm located right now, is the home to the largest Bosnian population outside of Europe.
Hmm.
How about that? And with an estimated 50 to 60,000 Bosnian Americans living in the region, and I'll say particular right across the river in South City. That is where a lot of them, well, a lot of Bosnians reside, and could go more into that history because it is very interesting. But got to give a shout out to my Bosnians out there. They're going to come in second in this group. That's where I have them ranked here. But third, I'm going to go with Qatar. And this might be a little bit of a surprising turnaround because that means I have Canada fourth on what is basically going to be their home turf. But I think this could be out of the United States, Mexico, and Canada as the hosts. If I'm going to rank those teams based upon who I think is going to disappoint the most, Canada would likely come in first in this instance. And it's possible that they finish, I mean, in all likelihood, probably not finishing last in this group. Like the odds would probably, point against that. But Bosnia versus Canada, that'll be a game that potentially flips this entire group around. And so from that perspective, Switzerland number one, Bosnia number two, Qatar three, and Canada number four in Group B. So just to run down that group again. So Franco, you had
Canada.
Canada number one. So as the host, and it's not. I will say, like a lot of people are going to have Canada, Mexico, and the United States potentially doing, well in this tournament. You see the colors on the bottom. It's like, this tournament's based on those three countries on their soil. We have Canada number one, Switzerland two, Bosnia three, right?
Y- yes.
Bosnia three and Qatar four in Group B. As for Group C, moving on, gets a little bit more interesting here. We have Brazil, Morocco, Scotland, and Haiti in Group C. Franco, how do you see this Group C playing out?
Well, obviously, Brazil is the heavy favorite with, I believe, Neymar making his return to the FIFA World Cup and also the other talented players around him. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to break down the talent on each roster. Uh, Scotland has always been Switzerland and Scotland almost kind of fall within the same category of teams that are very, um, very. I mean, Europe is a very well-oiled machine when it comes to creating soccer teams and football teams. I mean, looking over, I believe the Swiss league is one of the stronger leagues alongside Scotland over in Europe. But then the other two countries, Haiti and Morocco, probably both passionate teams with franchises, but smaller countries that haven't been able to develop and utilize the talent available for their roster to create a solid push. So with Group C, I have Brazil coming out on top, Scotland coming in second, and Haiti coming in third.
And Morocco in fourth.
Yes.
This group, I feel like Brazil, if they don't win this group, I mean, something is awry with Brazil. And I would expect 10 times out of 10 almost for Brazil to win a group like this with Scotland, Morocco, and Haiti. And that's where I'm going with this group. Brazil, clearly, I mean, I don't, if somebody's going against Brazil in this group, I mean, they're thinking like somebody's coming up with an upset against this Brazilian team. But what I think we're going to see within this group is you have Scotland and Morocco, who I feel like play more tactical, and even like Scotland, they play a rugby type of game. They play a very physical game. Whereas Morocco, they can be physical themselves, but they're a little bit more tactical. Haiti is just not going to have really the talent, period, within this group. But Brazil, they're just going to look quicker, more talented than just Scotland, Morocco, and Haiti in this particular setting. And I just don't see a scenario where, there's an upset on the. Yeah, like it's possible. It's soccer, right? It does happen, but in this scenario, I don't really see Brazil losing a game in the group stage. So in terms of that, Scotland, though, I do. This is where, I think really looking at Group C, Brazil 1 is going to be a consensus. I think Haiti at 4 is also going to be somewhat of a consensus. But then right in the middle, Scotland and Morocco, people are going to have a tough time picking one of those two teams. And it's going to come up to, what those two teams do against each other. And I think Morocco, obviously, the last World Cup had quite a run. I mean, do you think about the teams they upset in that tournament? They really had a St. Peter's-esque run, like St. Peter's from, March Madness, the NCAA tournament. It was that type of a run for Morocco. I don't see the same thing playing out in this tournament just for the simple mathematical fact of they just did it 4 years ago. And that could mean, they're better. They could be better as a team this year, considering 4 years ago they make it as far as they do. And when you do that in such a massive setting, there's probably more funds coming into your foundation and organization for growing the brand of soccer in Morocco and even the program of Moroccan soccer. And one could point to that and go, okay, Morocco is a better team in Scotland. There's some questions around them, but I think in a game between Scotland and Morocco, I could see Scotland pulling out a game in this scenario, especially.
Okay. Mexico has officially won 2-0, 2-0 to kick off Group
Congratulations to Mexico on winning the World Cup opener. And I gotta say, very aesthetically pleasing World Cup opener. I like both uniform kits and
By the way,
sometimes the World Cup kits like just don't look right. Like it's like I don't really know what this country was going for here, but I like the World Cup kits to start this particular tournament here.
if
But
people
in
think
Group C,
New York is is going crazy, I can't imagine what the environment is like in Mexico right now, heading into this World Cup. And as they progress, if they continue to build and continue to progress forward within this tournament, I can only imagine the celebrations that are going on. Truly, truly passionate group of people when it comes to their sport.
and what's great about this tournament too is just you really look at the host countries, the fact that each country has the opportunity to play on their home turf. I mean and the sad part about America is, this feels like it should be a bigger tournament where we're going, man, American soccer in the 21st century, we're building, maybe American soccer, they're still right now they're in the middle of the pack. But 20 years ago, you're thinking, okay, like American soccer could build up to a point where are they in that top 10, top 15 teams within a tournament and on a world stage, particularly like the World Cup. And going into this moment, it just feels like, it's not necessarily, there's not a lot of confidence in the American team, I would say. Nobody really, outside of Christian Pulisic, really, I would say there's not really like there are guys that people know on the American team from say last World Cup and from their clubs, but there aren't many stars that are promising for the Americans or for America to really look up to an idol and say, yes, this is a reason why we're watching this tournament, right? Like a Wimby, right? Say with the Spurs, it's why are we watching the NBA finals in a sense? Like Wimby is freakish. He's just like everybody wants to watch him, and that's partially why the NBA Finals, along with the fact the Knicks are in the finals, such a highly rated thing right now. But the United States just doesn't quite have that draw within the team. But speaking of the United States here, just to be clear on Group C, Brazil, Scotland, Morocco, Haiti, and then Franco. Just to run down your Group C here: Brazil, Scotland, Morocco, Haiti, right?
Correct.
we're on the same page for Group C. But Group D, we do get to talk about the Americans again because in Group D, the United States, they're at the top here, along with Paraguay, Turkey, and Australia. Franco, how do you see this Group D playing out for the Americans specifically?
This might be the most winnable group out of them all for the United States to be placed in. Australia, I mean, they carry a strong weight and obviously probably carry the same physical style of play that the United or a Scotland, Morocco would, or even a New Zealand with the rugby background that most of the country has. Um, Paraguay and Turkey, I don't see either of those countries really standing too much of a stance against the United States. So I am keeping it plain Jane in my my prediction is as biased as it could possibly be, with Group A being won by Mexico, Group B being won by Canada, Group C being won by Brazil, and I have Group D being won by the United States of America. And in second place, I have Australia. In third place, I see Paraguay coming out.
I think, for one, the United States, this is a winnable group. It just is. Australia, Paraguay, and Turkey, there aren't really any big hitters in there. But what I'll say about this group is they are teams in which aren't far from the United States.
No,
And it's completely possible the United States, you look at all three of these teams, could have trouble against all three and lose.
oh, oh, Seamus just lost Wi-Fi as he reconnects. I mean, with the United States, I think that
All right, some afternoon internet issues, but we are back. But it's completely possible the United States, like the internet kicked me out as soon as they realized I don't know who they is. I was about to give this take, but the United States could lose all three games. The United States could lose all three of these games. Like these are teams that are not far away from the Americans from a soccer perspective. And yes, there's going to be some bias in us and say, well, the Americans are on their home turf. You know, they're I think they are a little bit better of a team than people suspected. Say back in 2024, when people were talking about United States soccer going into this particular tournament, they were saying, you know, the World Cup is 2 years away. Who is what's going on with the American team? Who is America's stars? And those questions weren't necessarily clear. And it's not as if, you know, again, the American team isn't full of a bunch of stars, but they're still a little bit better, I feel, than what the perception was. Because the perception was this team's going to be a mess. They're going to be one of the teams that you just don't believe in whatsoever in this setting. Yet we're in now a place where Group D, if you look at it, America, they could really top this group, and all of a sudden they're in a good spot and a good place going into the round of 32. And again, it's all depending on who they play from that point on. You know, they could receive favorable matchups. I think receiving favorable matchups is really the key to winning any sports tournament because you know sometimes you just receive a bad matchup and that's really the end of your season, but or tournament rather. But the United States in this spot, I would have topping Group D, and then coming in second. This is where it's actually hard because I think this group could be ultra competitive throughout. Australia, Paraguay, Turkey. I'm gonna go with in second. I'm gonna go with Turkey. And in third, I'm going to go with Paraguay. And fourth, Australia. I think people are going to overrate Australia a little bit. Australia has been at these tournaments, but they've really never been a team that you see performing at a World Cup. And I think in this setting, you know, Paraguay, people are high on them because they're playing, of course, you know, within their own hemisphere. But Turkey, very good soccer nation as well. Like people underrate the impact of soccer on Turkey and even basketball as well. Like, you know, got to give a shout out to basketball in Turkey, but I think they're going to do well in this tournament. The United States, Turkey, Paraguay, and Australia. That's how I would round out Group D, and then Franco, just to recap your Group D: United States, Australia, Paraguay, and Turkey. So we have Paraguay and the United States in the same spots, but Australia and Turkey, those are flipped around for us.
Mhm.
But I will say here, Franco, it sounds like there's like water spilling into your room right now.
Well, we are dealing with the
And like
summer.
it sounds like you're in the bottom of a ship.
Well, the summer,
Like,
summer
we got
heat,
to make sure you're not sinking in the ocean right now.
summer heat's kicking. So I have a fan directly 3 feet below me, and it's probably not good that it's hitting the microphone. But yeah, I mean, heading into round Group D, I think that will be a easier group, and then after that will be we're looking at Group E, which
Which
is Germany, Ecuador, Ivory Coast, which I would assume is Ireland.
no. The Ivory Coast from West Africa. The
Ah,
flags are the flag for the Ivory Coast goes orange, white, green. The flag for Ireland goes green, white, orange.
this
So,
show is just highlighting how uncultured I am. But that's
and
why
there's like a French pronunciation for the Ivory Coast as well, but we won't get into that because I, we could really get that one wrong. Also, Curacao,
yeah,
which I'm like 85% sure that's how you say it. I feel like I've heard it said before,
Cur-
maybe like
curacao
Curacao.
isn't that a liquor? Blue curacao. Yeah.
I see. I don't know about that. All I know is, I like like, countries and flags. I like that. It's kind of right up my alley here in some regard. But in Group E, Franco, now that you know that Ireland is not involved in this tournament,
I'm upset.
the Ivory Coast, you're like, damn, that's a cool nickname for Ireland.
Yeah,
that
but
is that is pretty funny. But that is like the common misconception about the Ivory Coast. Like you see, it's like similar flag, starts with an I.
if
Like
this
I
live
just
reaches an international audience, they're gonna be like, "Look at these American dumbasses."
well, I'm just saying too. Like if you were to watch them on field, you'd probably be like, "This is Ireland."
Yeah.
But anyway,
Uh,
um, Group E: Germany, Ecuador, the Ivory Coast, and Curacao. How do you rank those teams?
well, I'm liking based off my knowledge of what we was just displayed of the final two countries. Obviously, Germany will stand a strong stance, and also Ecuador, a very really the South American teams. I'm putting a lot of stock into. I think that they will always make a strong stance, and also Northern Europe. I think always makes a strong stance as well, or Europe in general. So in Group B, I have Germany with the walking away in the one spot, Ecuador walking away in the two spot, and Curacao or Curacao walking away in the third spot.
And I think this is wait. So you had yeah.
Germany, Ecuador, Curacao. And if
So
we're,
you have Ivory Coast fourth.
yes,
All right. So it's slightly different. Germany and Ecuador are going to be. This is another group. We talked about it with Group C. Brazil's going to be the consensus number one in Group C. Nobody's going to pick against Brazil in that group. In Group E,
nobody's gonna pick nobody's gonna pick over Germany, but Ecuador and Curacao and the Ivory Coast both could also stand a strong chance as well, as Seamus is starting to figure out the Wi-Fi or get back onto Wi-Fi. I will start going through the other group. So I would believe that Seamus was going to dive into his predictions with the Group E, but we'll be able to get back to him. Group F will be Sweden, Netherlands, Japan, and Tunisia. So this is where Seamus comes into play, and he would be a little bit more explanative. But going down Group F, I'll just quick fire it down, and as Seamus comes back in,
The
we'll
internet is not agreeing here today in the middle of the afternoon. I mean, literally, I saw everything shut off at once. I have three monitors right here, and it all just went. "Meow." I'm like, all right, well, there goes the internet. So I had to fire up the hotspot. So we're back, folks. But Group C, like I was talking about, Brazil was the consensus number one pick in Group C. Group E is going to be much of the same between Germany and Ecuador. Now, people are going to switch around those teams, Ecuador and Germany. You could have those interchangeable with each other. People could say, Germany's not as strong as they've been in the past, but on the other side, you have Ecuador, who's playing in their own hemisphere, which typically these things kind of matter within these large international tournaments. Closer to home, better crowd potentially. Although Germany should have quite a crowd in the United States, one would think a lot of German heritage in the United States. One would know. I mean,
Chinese might be a good place to be during that game.
which I wish I had some German gear. Or do I have a? Do I have? I know I don't have the sweatshirt. I guess we. Nope. I have the German beer brand Spaten, that's been around since I believe 1397. I mean, it's just insane. But anyway,
Free
Germany, I
free
would have.
advertising. Oh, well,
Yeah, we'll give it out because I don't know how many people drink
they're
that
good,
anyway.
but
Oh, hey man, 1397 might have been before. That might have been 1347, but I mean, give or take, 40, 50 years when you've been a brand for 700 years. But in that regard, like, I hope they survive. That's what I'm saying. But Group E, Germany, I would have coming out on top. People are a little sus about Germany, but I still think they're, what's going to determine whether or not they come out on top of this group is their game against Ecuador, and they could very much lose that game. But I see a world where Germany does perform well in this tournament because I do think they're going to have quite a bit of fans following them around their destinations within this World Cup, wherever they are actually slotted to play. I imagine there are a couple games there in America at a certain point in time, but Germany number one, Ecuador two. That's going to be a consensus in this group. Ivory Coast, I would have three. Now you could say Ivory Coast, like they've been known to kind of, shake the boat a little bit in the past. So you can't totally overlook the Ivory Coast, but they're gonna be three for me. And then Curacao, number four. I mean, this is their first World Cup. And typically, some of these smaller countries in their first World Cup doesn't always go well for them. You'd hope it goes well for them, obviously to grow the brand of soccer in that particular country, but I do have Curacao coming in fourth. So we have pretty much the entirety of the group is the same for us. Germany, Ecuador, we agree upon. However, Ivory Coast and Curacao, we do have switched around at the bottom. However, Group F, moving on to Group F, Japan, Tunisia, Sweden, and the Netherlands in this Group F. This one's going to be one of the tougher groups to pick, I feel like. And Franco, for Group F, what did you have ultimately happening in Group F?
with Group F, I'm seeing a lot more. This is definitely, as you said, one of the more tighter knit groups. Um, I would see based based on what I've seen more about the Netherlands and what they've been able to produce, and they're more favorited than Sweden heading into this. But I would say those two are really more of a toss up with Japan falling up in third. So I would say Netherlands walk out as the group leaders in one. Sweden is second, and Japan comes in third with Tun- Tunis,
Tunisia.
Tunisia coming in fourth.
Group F is one that I think people are really going to be just throwing around in terms of like, there's not really a total consensus. People are going to like the Netherlands, but then you also have Japan and Sweden, who are at this point, like, they're not that far away from the Netherlands in terms of competition. You wouldn't be surprised if Sweden defeated the Netherlands or even Japan in this spot. I would be a little shocked if Tunisia came out and just started hammering teams in this group. I do think the Netherlands, Japan, and Sweden sit above where Tunisia's at, but ultimately for this entire group, I do have to go with the Netherlands at the top. Again, I think they're going to have a lot of fans, just like Germany. Some of these other away countries per se, Brazil, Germany, the Netherlands, it's going to be a lot of fans for those teams here in America, specifically, and even Canada, and even going down to Mexico here in North America. There's going to be a quite a bit of a fan base for them, and I think that could ultimately swing one of their games, say against Sweden or Japan. But coming in second in this group, this is where I'm a little torn between Japan and Sweden. I want to go with Japan just because I think Japan usually within these situations they're kind of like they're kind of like the Switzerland of the East in a sense, where they always seem to overperform when it comes to World Cup time. So I'm going to go with Japan in this moment. But I will say what's going to be tough for Japan is they're facing the Netherlands and they're facing Sweden. Now Japan, from a size perspective, they're not a very big team. Just from you know the Japanese guys on the field, they're not the largest of players versus Sweden. You have a bunch of guys who are beyond 6 foot out there. The Netherlands are going to have some tall defenders out there, specifically on the back line. And that could definitely cause a problem for Japan in this tournament. But like I said, Japan, they kind of just seem to be that underdog that, they play their game. They're not that scrappy of a team, but they're scrappy in terms of just speedy, quick, up the field. They attack with ferocity in that regard. They're not going to, be super physical with you, but they're going to be a team that's going to be a little bit annoying when they, of course, get up the field. But I do have the Netherlands number one. I'm going to have Japan reluctantly number two, Sweden three, and Tunisia four within this group F. And, looking at your group F, you have Sweden one, Netherlands two, Japan three. This is again where like I just feel like this group is going to be completely thrown around. We agreed on Tunisia, but then looking at 1 through 3, our 1 through 3 is completely different. So looking at Group F, that one is going to be, there are some groups in this tournament where you go, Group F isn't the most elite group, but it's certainly an entertaining group, right? Given the teams that are actually in that pool. But moving on to Group G, this is where things get, I'm looking at all the groups. I'm like, man, we have Group I and J and K and L. Like, I'm not used to all this. Like, there's so many groups. But moving on to Group G, we have Belgium, Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand in this group. I think this is going to be another consensus group as well, with Belgium at the top. But Franco, what do you have for Group G?
I am saying my group is looking like um, for G. I had Belgium, Egypt, and New Zealand, and I mean based off of Egypt, the same case with that whole continent continuing to develop their sports and continuing to develop their entertainment. Belgium standing strong, and then New Zealand with their hard hitting style. With Iran, I think they could, if they are able to put together a strong, solid run, they could really put together a Cinderella story and really create some positive notions for the country as we know what's going on within the outside the world of sports within Iran. So hopefully they are able to put it together a couple of good games, but unfortunately they are put in a very, very challenging and talented pool in Group G.
I'll say with Group G, this is definitely, like I just mentioned, a Belgium spot where Belgium, it just feels as if in these tournaments, Belgium's been given a rough hand before, and I don't know why, but just for whatever reason, all these other teams, they're good throughout history, and in different moments, they're maybe better than good. They're even great. You could say France is in one of those moments right now, but with Belgium, and this is just a term in general. It's the golden generation, you know, and Belgium, I don't know why, but it's used with them more than any other team in an international setting. It's like the golden generation of Belgium. And people have been saying for quite a while now, it's like, oh, when's it's over. It's over. It felt like it barely started. It came and then it went. And these international tournaments, you only get a couple shots at them, whether it's the Euros or even the World Cup. And those are really the two. If you're looking at Belgium's perspective, it's like those are the two tournaments you want to win the most within your golden generation. And they just haven't been able to get over the hump. Now, that's where I think, though, in terms of looking at the tournaments, look at how many teams haven't been able to get over the hump in these settings because, again, it only happens every 4 years or even every 2 years if you're talking about throwing the Euros into the mix. And Belgium, they've been in the mix every single year and every single tournament to the point where, some of these tournaments, they're in that Final Four, they're in the semifinals. But Belgium, right now, they're not as strong as they've been in the past. However, what I'll say about them right now is they are in a group in which they could win and they could be putting themselves in a favorable spot to advance further in this tournament. And I just think the doubt behind Belgium in the last couple of years has been a little overstated because I think people just go, oh, this was the peak of a team, and now they're just not at their peak, so therefore they're going to just completely fall off the map. But Belgium, they're still a quality team, and they're still in a favorable setting for them here in Group G, and that's why I would have Belgium coming out on top, and that's going to be a consensus pick for this group. Now, coming in second, you have Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand. Now, these three teams, this is like Group F. You have three quality teams in the Netherlands, Japan, and Sweden. This group is Belgium and everyone else because I think we can all slot in like Iran has the highest possibility to finish in finishing fourth in this group, I would say. Likely. I don't know what the odds state for this group in particular, but Iran, given the geopolitical circumstances of this team, I would say there's going to be forces or factors that maybe go against them in the tournament. Just saying, like, I don't know, like the referees, like travel, whatever it is, right? I think there's going to be some things thrown at the Iranian team, like even as simple as say they play these other teams, Belgium, Egypt, and New Zealand, they might have to travel further and they might not be accommodated to do the highest of degree. So, in that regard, I would have Iran fourth. I would have Egypt second. I think Mo Salah is going to have a good tournament for potentially what is his last World Cup tournament. New Zealand third, and then Iran fourth. I could see Egypt beating New Zealand in what is going to be probably an entertaining game between those two teams to potentially grab the second spot in that group. But Belgium, Egypt, New Zealand, and Iran have for that group, and then Franco, of course, breaking down your group, you had Belgium, New Zealand, Egypt, and Iran. So we just switched around New Zealand and Egypt in that spot.
Yeah.
But Group H, we have Cape Verde, Spain, Uruguay, and Saudi Arabia. This is gonna be like watch out for the upset alerts within Group H. That's what I'll say about Group H. But Franco, what do you have going down the list for Group H?
Group H is a interesting group. I think that my front runner, which is the front runner for the tournament, is Spain. Right now, Spain has put together a very strong team heading into this and are one of the front runners for winning it all this year. Looking through the rest of the teams, Saudi Arabia, obviously, that is, uh, as I've been talking about with the Middle East and the development of their sports teams. I am positive that Saudi Arabia has put a great deal of effort into putting together this team, developing this team, basically making super soldiers of soccer players, and with the technological advances and the probably available properties to use in departments and facilities they have available in Saudi Arabia. So that's a team I'm taking second because I'm sure they want to make a statement this year with a solid performance in this year's World Cup. And then Uruguay is probably the third favorite heading into this. Cabo Verde might another physical team, but I think that they'll probably hold their weight. As once again, I am holding a lot of weight in South America to perform well.
I think Saudi Arabia could definitely upset one of Spain or Uruguay in this group, but ultimately, looking at the entirety of the group, it's hard not to put Spain at the top. They're really one of the tournament favorites. They're coming off, let's see, Euro 2024. They won that tournament, and at a certain point in time, they just kind of singled themselves out as the best team in Europe. And one could debate that today, but going into this group in particular, Spain, they're going to have a tough matchup against Uruguay, and they're going to have, you got to watch out for Saudi Arabia at the end of the day. But looking at the entirety of the talent sphere residing in this group, Spain has to be at the top, Uruguay number two, Saudi Arabia three, and then Cape Verde four. And Cape Verde, they're a team. I believe they're one of three teams in this tournament making their World Cup debut. I believe it's Uzbekistan, Cape Verde, and Curacao making their World Cup debuts. And World Cup debuts for certain countries, like sometimes you just got to get there, and that's the big achievement. And actually performing there, well, that's another thing, especially when you're in a group with Spain, Uruguay, and even Saudi Arabia, who's like they're kind of further along in the process than say a Cape Verde or in Uzbekistan. They've been there before. They've obviously spent a lot of money on their soccer development within their nation. And Saudi Arabia going up, like for Cape Verde, this is just a monumental task of facing all three of these teams in this group, especially Spain at the top, and even Uruguay, who's let's face it, they've been World Cup winners in the past, like the long past, of course, but you cannot look past that in Group H. Moving on to Group I, however, another favorite in the tournament resides in this group. We have France, Senegal, Iraq, and Norway. Franco, how do you see Group I playing out here?
Well, I'll just fire it right through this one. I think France, obviously, as they are currently practicing at Bentley University in Waltham, which is right down the road from Boston, and
Say not too
is
far away.
a very local school. It's actually led to a lot of opportunities, and the field crew have really had to step up beyond measures to make sure they are properly taken care of. And there's currently parties going on around Boston, but yeah, I mean, the effect that this is having on the city. But France, obviously, coming off the Premier League, feeling like a heavy favorite, one of the younger teams as well. So I would see them putting up a strong, heavy favorite as the number one team. Norway coming in at two, and I would say Senegal coming in at three.
For this group, I think this is another consensus where, some of these groups you're just going to have a favorite at the top, just like say Group C with Brazil, Group E with Germany and Ecuador, Group H with Spain, like we just mentioned, Group G with Belgium, of course, obvious one there. But Group I, another obvious one, France. France doesn't finish at the top of this group. There could be an upset in there. Uh, Erling Haaland with Norway, maybe they could do it. maybe they're familiar opponents in Europe to some degree, but it would be a tough task for Norway to take down France, and for any of these teams really to take down such a skilled and talented French team that, let's face it, they have some of the best players in the world at multiple positions, and they're a favorite to win this tournament. They're trying to be, I believe, they're joining two other teams. If they make it to three straight World Cup finals, they're either joining two other teams, or they'd be the first team to ever do that. But basically, the whole point in this is France. They're going for history during this World Cup, and they're trying to make it two out of three. And that's why you still got to respect them and favor them. And even looking at the entirety of the roster of France, it's like they still have young guys coming up. They always are just restocking the pile of great players within their arsenal, and that's why you just have to respect France to the level in which you don't even consider any of these other teams topping the group above France. But outside of France, I have Norway at two. Norway and Senegal. That's going to be a really entertaining game because you really look at those two nations. When have they ever faced? Ever? I'm sure like they could have faced in a World Cup, they could have faced in friendlies, who knows? But those are just two nations you don't really think about playing each other at all, and that could definitely show us. Could show us how good Senegal is. But I think Norway, they're going to have a little bit more firepower, especially owning one of the best, playing one of the best players in Europe in Erling Haaland on their front line, and that's going to be a tough player for Senegal and any team to deal with, even France. Let's face it. But Senegal 3, Iraq 4. I do think Senegal has the ability to beat an Iraqi squad in this particular setting. And so after looking at that, France 1, Norway 2, Senegal 3, and Iraq 4. And Franco, you had France 1, Norway 2, Senegal 3, and Iraq 4 as well. So we are in agreement on Group I. But in terms of Group
Yeah.
J, making sure it's not a bent eye here. Group J, Argentina, Austria, Jordan, and Algeria. A lot of A's in this group. This group also might also, Group J might also have another consensus pick. But Franco, what does your Group J look like?
Headlined by Lionel Messi himself. I believe that this is probably one of their stronger runs as well. I mean, Argentina in the past few, either with Olympics, Premier League, any of these big tournaments, it has been very, and also with Lionel Messi playing in Miami, it's really been noted as you don't know how much time he has left, but he still has juice in the tank. I think that he can still lead this team to the one seed in the tournament, followed up by Austria and the one debuting country that I see making it in to the next round of the tournament is Jordan.
Wow. So Jordan. So you have Argentina. So let's see. Let's recap yours real quick. So Argentina 1, Austria 2, Jordan 3, and Algeria 4. Is this correct?
It is.
Also, so Jordan making their debut, Cape Verde, Curacao, the DRC is no. Sorry, my
No.
bad. Uzbekistan making their debut. So to add Jordan onto the list of the teams making their debut earlier, but yeah, you have them three in this group here. I have Argentina 1. That's going to be one that it's kind of obvious. It's like Argentina, if you really look at their last three major tournaments, they've won all three.
Yeah.
So right now they're kind of the team to beat. They like, for as you could say, oh, Leo Messi is a little older, the team around him isn't as good, but really looking at their squad at this given moment in time, nobody's beat them in the last three major tournaments. So you really have to give them the title of the team to beat in this setting. And until somebody beats them, you're going to have to give Argentina respect. Also, a lot of Italians down in Argentina, so just supporting the heritage down there. But anyway, Argentina 1 in this group for me. I have Austria at 2. They're a physical team who always seems to kind of be knocking on the door of doing something good, but they're kind of like in Europe, they're kind of a playing team to some degree. Like if you were to compare this to the NBA and the NBA playoffs, like they're always kind of hovering around a playing team where it's like they're good enough to get in, but they're probably not good enough to make it past, say, the round of 16 or even in this instance, the round of 32. Algeria, I have three in this instance, and Jordan four. Algeria could surprise people and get that two spot, and I don't think it would be too much of a surprise. They are a quality soccer team. But Austria, I think that Austria Algeria game, that's going to be the one that really decides that one, and I can see Austria in the setting of this hemisphere, maybe performing just a little bit better. Although there's not too much of a basis for that, but who knows? Austria, I feel like their fans could travel well to this particular World Cup. However, moving on to Group K, Colombia, Portugal, Uzbekistan, and the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Uzbekistan making their World Cup debut. And the DRC, they're usually not here in the World Cup setting, not their debut, but not a common country to be seen in this spot. But feel as if this group definitely some consensus here as well. I'm using that word a lot, but that is what it is when it comes to a World Cup setting like this, when you just have, the talent gap in some of these teams you see is very vast. But for Group K, Franco, who do you got for Group K here?
Group K, I have led by Portugal. Obviously, a heavy favorite. Another soccer legend, Cristiano Ronaldo, will be of the highest note in this. I mean, that's what really what soccer has came down to is these top tier superstars making either their final runs or starting to elevate the up and coming talent that's around them. And Portugal is a team that has stood strong in the World Cup appearances, and I see them continuing to do so, followed by Colombia and the Dominican Republic of the Congo and Uzbekistan, a debuting country. I don't see them advancing past the group stage.
I like my Uzbeks out here, but I'm gonna have to put them in fourth in this group because really looking at it, the DRC and Uzbekistan, they're 3 and 4. I don't see a world where Portugal and Colombia, I don't see them conceding games to those two teams, and then they'll play each other, and what comes out of that will be the winner of the group, most likely. But in this setting, I would have Portugal one. The talent around Cristiano Ronaldo right now, like the whole conversation is, he's part of this tournament. How much should he really play? This might be the best team around Ronaldo ever, but to actually maximize their entire squad, it might be better for Ronaldo not to play as a frontline player beyond the age of 40, which he is really a LeBron esque athlete right now. Like you'd put, I would say, four guys in one category. You have LeBron, you have Ronaldo, you have
Messi, you
um,
have Curry.
whoa, 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 whoa. LeBron, Ronaldo, Tom Brady, Al Horford. No, okay, but like just like, but no, seriously, those three guys, specifically Tom Brady, Cristiano Ronaldo, and LeBron James, they're doing things past the age of 40 right now that we don't see. Even Chris Paul, when he got to 40, it's like, oh great, you're here at 40. Like he wasn't as maximized as some of these players right now in any given sport. Well, obviously Tom Brady's retired, but when he was 44, 45 playing, that's a whole different story. But Cristiano Ronaldo, like this is where Portugal, they have a really good team, but could Cristiano Ronaldo affect that in a negative way potentially for this tournament? That's what the talk on the street is. But I still have Portugal one in this group. One could say Colombia could come up with a big performance against Portugal. They're going to probably have a fair amount of fans at these games, considering Colombia not that far away from where these games are being held, and you'd think they have somewhat of a fan advantage in this situation. But those two teams are just the elite teams in this particular group: Portugal and Colombia, 1 and 2. But then 3 and 4, I have three, the DRC, and four, Uzbekistan. Those two teams I just don't see being up, or I unfortunately for this tournament, when I see those two teams, like when they play each other, I think it's going to be very interesting. But when they play Portugal and Colombia, I think there's going to be some, lopsided affairs within those matchups. But Portugal, Colombia, DRC, and Uzbekistan, that's how I'm rolling with Group K. Group L, we have Croatia, Ghana, Panama, and England in this group. And this one's going to be a little tough to pick, I would say, for some people, although there are some teams in which people may favor as near tournament favorites, not quite tournament favorites, but in the pool of tournament favorites for this last group here, Group L, before we break down the knockout stage. Franco, for Group L, how do you see this group rolling out?
I see this group rolling with England as the heavy favorite. Croatia, also another strong team, and alongside Ghana and Panama. I would really group the behind England a real toss-up, but I went with Croatia coming in second and Ghana coming in third, and Panama coming in fourth.
And from my perspective, Group L, England, I would say is probably the consensus, although you have to be careful picking England in this spot because Ghana and Croatia don't overlook those teams. It's like England could fall into a spot where they're like Germany or even Mexico in past tournaments where you think, oh, Germany and Mexico should win these groups, and all of a sudden they're losing to competition that's not too far away from their level, but has always been competitive with them. And England, you could say Croatia, England, that's going to be a competitive matchup. You'd give England the nod there, but it's not as if Croatia can't win that game. And then you go against Ghana as well. Ghana has usually been a quality soccer team at these tournaments, and even Panama. People really like the team staying within their hemispheres, within, particularly their own continents. In Panama, they're not traveling too far for these games. And so people look at that team too and go, could they make a little bit of a run in this group? But what I have for Group L is this: England number 1, Croatia 2, Ghana 3, and Panama 4. So we agree upon that. Outside of, you have Ghana 2 and Croatia 3. And I believe this is going to be Luka Modric's last tournament, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, Croatia, it's not as if they don't, have some quality guys and some development around him that will maybe potentially take the torch thereafter. But moving on to the bracket, going on to the bracket. So, Ranko, which bracket do you want me to use here? You sent me two.
Let's go with my my risk one.
Well, okay. Who is the champion? Is it green or blue?
Green.
I won't reveal the team. Okay, green. Cool.
We'll
All right. So
risk.
the round of 60, not 60. This is not the NCAA tournament, folks. The round of 32. If we want to go through it, like Franco, you can just roll down your round of 32 here on the left side. And
sure, I was trying to pull it up somehow onto our screen. I have it downloaded into background, but how could we pull that off? Would I put that in overlays?
don't bother putting it in overlays because the dimensions might not be right.
Well, I will just list it off my phone.
Actually, I mean, we could get it up. I don't know. Let's see. If you upload to the Google Drive a 16:9 photo of your bracket, on a a black background or a background that's the same color, we could pull it up. And we could do it that way. We wanted to do it that way.
Yeah. Well,
or we could just list them off the way we've been doing them.
We'll go Jerry style. With the matchups being Mexico versus Morocco, and I took Mexico, and this is for round 1. And then under that would be Switzerland versus Scotland, and I would take Switzerland walking out of that one.
So that sets up a matchup of next round: Mexico
versus Switzerland.
All right, and then
Next
going down the
one
bracket.
would be Canada versus Japan. And I have Canada walking away with that one.
Really got a
And
soft spot for Canada here.
then I have Brazil versus South Africa, leading to Brazil winning and a matchup of Brazil versus Canada in the round of 16. Then I have USA beating Croatia in round 1. And then I have Ecuador beating the Netherlands in round 1 as well, leading to a round 16 matchup of USA versus Ecuador. Then on the bottom, I have Germany versus Sweden. German on. I have to pull it up on this. Or
You have a thumbprint in the middle of this photo.
yes,
I think you have Germany and Senegal down here, and then you have Sweden versus an unknown team. You would have, I think, Sweden versus.
that would be
48 teams.
So that bottom corner is Germany versus Senegal, which I have Germany walking away with the win there. And then I have Sweden versus Australia, and I have Sweden walking away over Australia. So that makes round 16 Mexico versus Switzerland, Canada versus Brazil, USA versus Ecuador, and Germany versus Sweden. And in that matchup, I have Mexico beating Switzerland to move on in an upset. I have Canada, or I have Brazil beating Canada, and that causing the marquee matchup of Mexico versus Brazil. And then I have USA continuing their Cinderella story, beating Ecuador. And then I have Germany beating Sweden, leading to the marquee matchup of USA versus Germany.
Man. Wow.
I'm trying to sell international tickets.
What's crazy is like the United States, like this run isn't unfathomable.
No, it's not. And then if we move, actually, what? I'll just stick to each round.
No, keep going. Until get to this, go to the semifinal and then stop and then go to the other end of the bracket.
And then the quarterfinals is Mexico versus Brazil, USA versus Germany. I have Brazil walking away with the win here, and USA taking away the win over Germany.
This would be an unprecedented United States run, and what I'm pointing out is you have the United States in the position to even like just win a bronze medal here.
Yeah.
Finishing third, the third place game. Like the United States makes it all the way to the semifinal against Brazil. They'll be playing in at the very least the third place game, which is I still think a fairly big accomplishment. I mean, teams who get there are always, a little sour because you're going, man, we wish we were playing in the final. We were one step away from it. We could have won the final. But, the third place game, I always think the third place winner, the bronze medal winner, always feels better than the silver medal winner. Always in these tournaments, because the silver medal winners ending their tournament on a loss where they could have won the whole thing as a gold medal champion. Yet if you're in third, yes, you have that moment of defeat in the semifinals, but you end the tournament on a win and you grab that third spot, and that's actually something to feel good about when the tournament ends. Like, it's not the best thing in the world, but it's still like something that's not losing, right? But anyway, you have the United States at least playing in that game.
So it's USA versus Brazil in the semifinal of the, I don't know how they set that up, of the left side of our bracket.
They don't
advancing over to the right side of our bracket. In the first round, we have Belgium versus Uruguay, and I have Belgium walking away with the win there. Then we have Saudi Arabia versus Norway, and I have Norway beating Saudi Arabia this year, and then that sets up the matchup of Belgium versus Norway in round 16. Then moving down, I have Spain versus Egypt, and I have Spain beating Egypt in that matchup. And
Gotta watch
then,
out. Spain lost to Morocco last World Cup. Gotta watch out for Egypt this World Cup. Gotta watch out for those Northern African teams. Spain's just a hop, skip, and a jump away from these countries, you know.
yep, and then France and New Zealand would be the matchup below that, and that would be France walking away with the win there, leading to the marquee matchup in round 16 of Spain versus France.
That seems like it almost happened too early, which I guess that's kind of what we're slotted because both of those teams should be number one in their groups. That's probably where we're going in this tournament. Feels pretty
Yeah,
early to have that matchup, but here we are.
and then under under that for the final, or not the final matchup, Argentina versus Czech Republic, or Czechia now. I have Argentina taking the win there, and the teams that would be matching up below that is Colombia and Ghana, and I have Colombia taking the win there, leading to the matchup I would consider potentially marquee. I mean, there are a few countries between each other, so there might be a little bit of a rivalry there. South America versus South America, Argentina versus Colombia, and then Portugal versus Ivory Coast, and then I have Portugal taking the win there, and then England. My graphic is cut off again. Who was England facing off
England.
against? Austria. And I have England beating Austria in that matchup, causing round 16 to be Belgium versus Norway, Spain versus France, Argentina versus Colombia, Portugal versus England. And with the first matchup on that round 16 would be Belgium versus Norway, and I have Belgium taking the win over Norway there. And then France versus Spain, that matchup, I have France walking away with the upset over Spain in the brackets, even though they are the 1 and 2 in odds in the whole entire tournament. I have France walking away with that win, leading to a matchup of Belgium and France in the quarterfinals. Then I have Argentina versus Colombia, which I have Argentina continuing their hot streak and advancing past Colombia. And then with the matchup below that being Portugal versus England, I have Portugal squeaking by with the win there, leading to the marquee matchup of Messi and Ronaldo in the quarterfinals.
This is actually possible. People have been talking about this because both teams could finish. Well, because you have Portugal second in their group, right? Or first.
I believe first.
Okay, yeah. So if both finish first in their groups, this is the path they could be on if they make the quarterfinals. Though that's going to be a little tough, but still, like, you know, a team like England and a team like Colombia, you know, it's not going to be easy for them. But yeah, that could be. People are talking about it. Just saying. People are just recognizing the scheduling, the alignment of the schedule here.
Right, and a team like
Spain,
Belgium,
France. I can't believe that matchup could be in the round of 16. That's pretty early. Anyway.
Yeah, and I mean that allows for. I mean these matchups, the way this bracket is set up, allows for the possibility of a team like the USA or Belgium to sneak in there, to sneak into
or
the
Bosnia.
quarterfinals.
Bosnia. We'll get to my bracket in a second. I'm looking at my bracket, going, how did it shape up this way? But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
With
the
quarterfinals.
Right side, the right side quarterfinals are Belgium versus France and Argentina versus Portugal. I have France walking away with the win over Belgium. Belgium really fell favorite to the way the bracket landed, and that's how they made it that far. And then Argentina versus Portugal. Although Argentina and Messi have had a strong run, I think Portugal really has that youth and has started to surpass Argentina when it comes to the talent. Where I have Portugal moving past to set up the two semifinal matchups of USA versus Brazil and France versus Portugal.
And who do you got in those matchups, Franco?
And in those matchups, I have Brazil moving past the USA, and France and Portugal. I have France moving on to create a FIFA World Cup final of France versus Brazil. And
Before you give out your champion, who would be between the United States and Portugal in the third place match? Who wins that game?
unfortunately, I don't see the U.S. taking bronze in that. I think Portugal ends up winning the bronze medal in that matchup. But the
Now,
fact that they are even on a even near the podium is a lot more than the U.S. could even ask for when it
well, if
comes
they
to a
make it to this
tournament.
point, I mean, this is a total win for the United States. They finish fourth in the tournament. Fourth.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking like, can they be like a top 15 team, maybe top 10? Like, how about fourth? That'd be great. But your World Cup final champion
I have
is
Brazil. I had two brackets that I sent Seamus before we went live today, and one of them was my safe route, and the other one was my uh, stick to your gut type of decision. And I went with Brazil being your FIFA World Cup champions over France. France is the superpower team, but right now Brazil has created a lot of momentum behind what they have put together as a team, and this is one of the more confident Brazilian teams that they have put out on the field in a very long time, and I think they can reach that type of notoriety and supremacy they used to have within the soccer world about even a decade ago.
they did host the tournament in 2014, and I'll preface that with saying this: if there's any tournament Brazil should be able to win or could win, it should be this tournament. It's in the Western Hemisphere. It's not too far from Brazil. There's going to be a lot of Brazilian fans, and I understand 2014. That was a year in which they could have won 7-1 against Germany. Said otherwise at the end of that tournament in the semifinals, and man, we were one game away from an Argentina Brazil final in the World Cup final in Brazil, and it was Germany and Argentina, and Germany won, and that kind of like Germany is almost like the Knicks in that situation. I feel
It
like
ruined. I'm all about
it's like
this. Like
wow,
obviously, if you can tell from my bracket that I put together, there is not too much soccer knowledge in X's and O's, even if they call it that in soccer
they
when they're
should,
doing.
right?
Yeah,
X's and O's are just people you write down on a strategic board.
yeah.
So
So I'm not one that's good with the X's and O's, but one thing that I am halfway decent with is understanding what a a gener a general audience would like to see, and all my matchups basically highlight what would basically be the most appeasing, not only to a national audience but the international audience as well.
yeah, and I think the tournament, like, what this is why these tournaments are great too, is they're really good at producing some marquee matchups that are just big, like big spots where you're thinking, this is history altering stuff, and say what might be a round 16 matchup between Spain and France. Whoever wins that might win the whole thing. Like that could be the World Cup final in the round of 16, and it's all set up by the marquee matchups, especially in particularly the knockout stage. But for my knockout bracket here, going through it, and I'm gonna fill it out as I'm talking here. I'm like, I haven't even filled it out yet. I'm gonna have Mexico over Morocco in the round of 16. Below that, Bosnia over Scotland, which I'm like, how did Bosnia get into a place where they're playing Mexico in the round of 16, and Mexico's probably looking at this going, man, if Bosnia can really finish second in that group, or that group, I believe, if I'm not mistaken here, the group with Bosnia, that was probably my one like actual upset group per se. But let's see, they're in Group B: Canada, Switzerland, Qatar. If Mexico, there's a roadmap here for Mexico, and they've really not been able to get past the round of 16. They call it the fifth game in the World Cup, the infamous fifth game, because you play your group stage games, and then you play that round of 16 game. They haven't been able to get past that game and get to the fifth game. They have not been able to get to the fifth game. Now, this tournament, I will say there's a round of 32, so they'll have an extra round to get to that game, which will technically be the round of 16 this time. But Mexico and Bosnia Herzegovina in the second round. Then I have Switzerland beating Sweden. I have Brazil beating South Korea. So that sets up Brazil and Switzerland, which that's been a pretty common matchup at the World Cup as of late. Again, with Switzerland, overachieving a bit, and Brazil, of course, just being themselves and advancing deep into tournaments. But Brazil and Switzerland facing off yet again at the World Cup. Then I have Ecuador over Japan, Germany over Algeria. Wow. Oh, Germany, Algeria. That would bring up the history of, there was a particular game back in the 20th century, I believe back in the 70s, where Germany and Algeria faced in the World Cup, and Germany took a lead and basically just held the ball the entirety of the game and just passed it around, held the ball, did nothing, never attacked. And then there was this whole uproar after the game about how Germany, they basically just, it's like they took the lead and they decided, we're not going to play soccer anymore. We're just going to keep the ball and keep it away from Algeria, and that's it. And so Germany, Algeria, there's some history there from back in the 20th century. Not only that, the 2014 World Cup, I believe, they also faced off in the round of 16. This would be the round of 32, however. I missed the matchup here between the United States and Senegal. And this is, again, the United States. There's a path, there's a roadmap here. Senegal, that's a team the United States could certainly beat in this tournament. Let's just face it. And I have the United States beating Senegal up there to set up a matchup between the United States and Ecuador, which could be, quite a challenge for the United States, but that's also not a matchup where you totally put it past them. But at the bottom of the bracket here, the Netherlands and Turkey, I'm going to go with the Netherlands, setting up the matchup of Germany and the Netherlands in round two, which would be another marquee matchup. And outside of Mexico, Bosnia Herzegovina, the United States and Ecuador, that's going to be on primetime TV just because of the American influence. But Switzerland, Brazil, not quite a marquee matchup, but one that owns a lot of history. And then Germany and the Netherlands, another matchup that owns quite a bit of history in terms of the European setting. But in the round of 16, I would have Mexico beating Bosnia. I would have Brazil beating Switzerland. I'm going to have the United States beating Ecuador in this spot. Come on.
We're
Let's
riding the
do it,
wave.
America. Come on. Yeah, come on. Let's ride the red, white, and blue here. Germany defeating the Netherlands, and that sets up a matchup of Germany and the United States in the quarterfinals, and Mexico and Brazil, which I believe we actually have the exact same setup in that regard. But what's interesting is if the Netherlands beat Germany, the United States will be in a spot of revenge, because if I'm not mistaken, the Netherlands took out the United States in the 2014 World Cup, I want to say. I think it was the 2014 World Cup. Could it have been? I don't remember how the United States exited each World Cup, but the Netherlands, they were a part of the demise of the United States at one point or another in World Cup history. And so if the Netherlands beat Germany, there could be a little bit of a revenge spot for the United States there, but I do have Germany beating the Netherlands. However, in the quarterfinals, I do have, is this Mexico's time? Is this Mexico's time? Mexico Germany semifinal just wouldn't make any sense. I don't. Brazil Germany. You know what? Okay, I'm going to have Brazil beating Mexico. Germany, unfortunately, for the United States, defeating them. And that sets up Brazil and Germany in the semifinal yet again from 2014. And we'll just leave it there and go on to the other side of the bracket. We'll not reveal anything else from the matchup, the rematch from the 2014 semifinal and the 2026 semifinal, but there may be a different order coming to play. But in the round of 32, this is where Belgium, man, they just have quite the path. Belgium has an easy group, as we know. Belgium in the round of 32 may be playing one of the DRC or Uzbekistan. So there's definitely a pathway for Belgium here. Belgium, I have them beating the DRC. Uruguay, they're going to beat Norway. Spain beats Saudi Arabia. That's going to be, again, like Spain, watch out for Saudi Arabia. France beats Egypt, which sets up matchups of Belgium and Uruguay and Spain and France. And again, that Spain-France matchup seems to be on a there. That matchup seems to be inevitable, and those two teams seem to be on a collision course for a matchup in the round of 16 that could knock out one of these two teams a lot earlier than suspected. What just happened here? Flash of light.
I lost the link.
Argentina and Czechia. I was like, what just like we all good on the East Coast here? It's like the East Coast experiences things first. But Argentina and Czechia, I have Argentina taking this game. Colombia and Croatia. Colombia, I have them beating Croatia. So that sets up the matchup of, again, Argentina, Colombia, like we talked about earlier. Portugal and the Ivory Coast. Got to take Portugal in that spot. England and Austria, going with England here over Austria. And then that sets up the potential matchup of England versus Portugal. And then going down the round of 16 on this side of the bracket, I'm going to go with Belgium over Uruguay. I'm going to go with Spain beat France at the Euros. I think this is France's time to maybe conjure up a little bit of revenge from the Euros. I'm going to go with France in this spot, setting up the matchup of Spain, or nope, not Spain, Belgium versus France in the quarterfinals. At the bottom of the bracket, come on, we got to go Leo Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo here. Portugal and Argentina. Argentina beats Colombia and Portugal beats England. Although I really honestly in this spot, I feel like England like could beat Portugal for sure, but I'd rather see the Ronaldo Messi matchup in the World Cup. Just one more. No, not I shouldn't say one more time. For the first time and maybe last time ever. But in that matchup, I would have Argentina versus Portugal. Ugh. I'm gonna go with Portugal in this spot, and at the top of the bracket, I'm gonna go with France over Belgium. That sets up France versus Portugal, a rematch of the 2016 Euro finals. So on one side, you have Brazil and Germany. On the other, France and Portugal. I'm gonna go with Brazil, upsetting. I shouldn't say upsetting Germany, but seeking a little bit of revenge on Germany for 2014. And then on the other side, I'm gonna have to go with France as well, and this is where things get boring because this is where I realize we have the same final, and I'm gonna pick France. Psych, I'm gonna pick Brazil to win the whole thing because I think Brazil is due for a tournament win. Wouldn't you say? Just
Yeah.
I think they're due. They're not the most formidable team compared to teams they've had in the past, but don't put it past Brazil. They're still a very, very talented squad. We know how popular the game of soccer is in Brazil. And in this particular instance, in this hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, they could certainly win the World Cup here. And in the third place matchup, I will say I have Germany beating Portugal in that spot. And Germany, Portugal, quite a few matchups between them in a European setting in really the last, I mean, just this century period. So at the end of this all, I think we're okay, guys. We're all in an agreement. Brazil winning the World Cup. Everybody watching and
Yep.
commenting here, right?
Yep.
Seeing some Belgium.
Yep.
Okay,
Chat's going wild.
of course. But that really does it for our predictions here. I thought we did pretty good here for like let's face it, I watch soccer pretty much every 2 years. I watch the European tournament, I watch the World Cup. What can I say? That's what I like. I can't
Yeah.
keep up with club soccer. There's four other sports to pay attention to here in America, and we all know basketball. Even right now, like last night, I'm literally last night's like game 4, crazy stuff happens. Posting about that, going live about that, and then right after the live, it's like, all right, now let's turn on soccer and let's study for the World Cup tomorrow. Like it's just like right now, it's just a create like we're going into the doldrums of the sports season with baseball and whatnot at the end. But I swear, the World Cup, the Euros, when they come around, it takes
It's
up a
gonna
little
fill it
bit of
in.
that.
Yeah, fills it in.
Fills it in just a little bit. But right now, some NBA Finals and World Cup clashing, and I'll say like, you know, the World Cup. I think today, like giving out the predictions, we'll be able to look back at this video, and even as the tournament goes along, we kind of have a little bit of a basis to stand on when watching these games. And even I think part of our World Cup coverage too is this is predictions, and we're predicting countries here, but you know reacting to these games too. Some of them are going to be marquee, some of them are going to be insane. Like this is it's just bound to happen. Like soccer, it's always thought of like boring, whatever, back and forth. They're just doing cardio, running around. But some of these games, it's going to end like 4-3, and a team's going to have a 2-1 lead, a 3-2 lead, and then a 4-3 lead, and then that's going to be. And it might be a game like the DRC and Uzbekistan, who we know both of those teams. They're not going anywhere in the tournament, but they might play an entertaining game between each other that's really worth watching. And that's really what I'm excited about for this tournament, is just the drama that it typically brings to a world audience and a world stage. And as we're seeing here, we're covering it on Forever Green Sports.
Yep.
But
I mean,
Franco, anything else today here?
yeah, I think we're heading into a real interesting time. I'm sure we'll either get out these predictions that we went over so you guys can see them visually on our page, or we create some reels or links for you guys to find this work. But we'll be returning back to the to talk about the FIFA World Cup either with a reactionary watch along or preview of one of these marquee matchups, or even just a post reaction of one of these matchups, or even just the whole entire tournament in general. But I'm really excited to see what storylines, because this year with the additions of the teams and the expansion of the brackets, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more wild cards, and we're going to see a couple of dark horse stories or Cinderella stories, as we saw or always see within a March Madness bracket. As a bracket continues to expand, that's how things get more and more wild as the time goes on. And I mean, we've seen that within all American sports as teams have either expanded or playoffs have expanded, either adding a bye week or some sort of wild card play in. And now we're going to be able to see it with the FIFA World Cup. And who who really knows what is going to come out of it other than some great storylines.
And gotta remind everybody, this only happens every 4 years. The last one was about 3.5 years ago, because it took place in December, because it's so hot in Qatar during the summer that they couldn't hold it there in the summer, and they held it in December. So 3.5 years ago in Qatar. But every 4 years the World Cup comes around, and I really think about it. It's like the World Cups that I remember: 2010, 2014, 2018, 2022. It's like these tournaments, they happen for a month, and there's not that many to remember really in time. You go ahead in time, you remember a couple more. This one's going to be another memory, but this is a big moment in, I would say, American history, because America is a part of hosting the World Cup, and also just soccer history as well. This is where legacies for some players really take off, where they're defined. And I look at it too, like, March Madness, certain guys who want to get drafted to the NBA, they perform in March Madness, and all of a sudden teams are looking at them. That's the same thing here for this World Cup. There are going to be players out there who are playing for some lower level squads, or some squads that just aren't as touted as some of the big dogs that exist in club soccer. And some of these club teams are going to watch players play in this World Cup and go, like, that player playing in this international stage in this big moment deserves this deal, deserves this contract, deserves a call up. And that's what also makes this tournament so great, is that it puts all these great players on a world stage. And for some of them, it really is career altering. And we've seen that before. And it's going to happen to somebody this summer. Let's face it, here in the World Cup, as we go ahead. And already Mexico beating the South Africans earlier today 2-0. And we have another game coming up later tonight, another match between South Korea and Czechia later at 9 p.m. And I believe this is, do I have Eastern time set on here or Central? Well, 9 p.m. either Eastern or Central, folks. Whatever time period is uh, is available on my what's it called, computer screen here. I'm guessing that it's actually 9 p.m. tonight because tomorrow's game says 2 p.m. for Canada and Bosnia, and today's game between Mexico and South Africa started at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. So I'm guessing that all of these times are in Central. So 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, Czechia and South Korea later tonight. So don't forget to check that game out. But let's face it, folks, there's going to be a lot of games, a lot of soccer games to watch throughout this World Cup tournament. And we're really just at the beginning of it. Mexico and South Africa playing earlier today, and Mexico beating South Africa 2-0 to win the first game as host, as part-time host, let's face it, Mexico in this World Cup. But that's going to do it for us here on this live. Nice little, this is like the first, like, man, we're really getting a run in here. We're really getting a run in with this. An hour, 50 minutes, probably went a little bit long on the predictions, but that's how it is for a 48 team tournament. With a 32 team tournament, it probably would have taken, an hour, 20 minutes. Who knows?
Right.
So.
And we're really stretching ourselves with this one. We're diving into something that is a little bit foreign territory for us to be covering. I mean,
but, if you want to explore foreign territory, the first thing one must do is actually take foot and take a step into that territory. And I feel like we did that today.
I think we did.
We accomplished that. But that is going to do it for us here on the Forever Green Sports Podcast. Of course, we are live here. We'll have pre-recorded podcasts as well up for you guys, talking about more football, American football, soccer, the World Cup. Basketball's still heating up. I shouldn't say heating up, but the off season's heating up right now. As the season dwindles down, the New York Knicks 3-1 lead on the San Antonio Spurs as we're recording this. We'll see what happens in that series. I just said, last night, 2016, there was a legendary Western Conference Finals, a legendary Finals, a blown 3-1 lead, and I'll say this, there was another 3-1 lead blown in that playoff run in 2016, and maybe it's the Knicks this time. Who knows? But we will have that all covered for you guys on the Forever Green Sports Podcast. And of course, the platform. Don't forget to go check out the Forever Green Sports Instagram page. Of course, the YouTube page. You should be on it right now. So go check us out there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, whatever people do on the internet that keeps clicking buttons, of course. Right? Share it to everybody. Hit that share button. Big groups. Share it into a big group, folks. That's it's good to spread the word. But of course, that is going to do it for us here today. The World Cup is underway, Franco. I'm excited. But anyway, that's it. We're done. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, alongside of me, Nick Franco. And, I got to say, how do we end these now?
I want to
USA. Like, go Celtics. Like, that's what I was trying to configure in my brain. Like,
we got to come up with one. Green out.
Green out. Peace, folks. Peace.